Okay, let's unpack this. We have been handed a fascinating stack of study guide excerpts, all focused on teaching English across cultures.
And it just immediately questions the whole traditional view of who owns the language.
It really does.
Yeah.
So if you're a learner, a teacher, or honestly, just someone who uses English to communicate globally, this deep dive is, I think it's going to fundamentally shift how you see it.
Yeah, how you view its standards, its purpose, all of it.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward.
We're distilling this core shift in global English, looking at the role of cultural context, the huge difference between equity and equality.
And some of the resources that are really, leveling the playing field out there.
Exactly.
And the place we absolutely have to start is with this one staggering data point that's sort of buried in here. The whole context is this realization that English is no longer just the language of native speakers. The L1 speakers you think of in London or New York.
It's become a global tool.
Yeah.
Unequivocally, used in every culture you can imagine.
But the key stat is that L2 speakers, so non-native learners, now actually outnumber L1 native speakers globally.
And that's just the starting point. That one fact changes everything.
Wait, hold on. Let's just sit with that for a second. L2 users outnumber L1 users. So what does that mean in practice?
Well,
Does it mean the native speaker is statistically becoming less relevant to the average English conversation?
it completely changes how you think about standards. Because the sources show that L2 speakers use English most often to communicate not with a native speaker in the UK or the US.
But with other L2 speakers.
Exactly. A German colleague talking to a Japanese client, a Brazilian scientist collaborating with a Korean one.
So that massive statistic it completely reframes what the goal of language education should even be.
And that shift has a name in the materials, EIL. English is an international language.
Right, EIL. And put simply, it's just the recognition that English is a global tool.
Yeah.
A lingua franca.
A lingua franca used mainly between non-native speakers. It acknowledges that the old center of gravity, those native-speaking countries, they're not the sole source of authority anymore.
What's fascinating here is how the goals of teaching have to change when you look at it that way.
The whole aim has to pivot. It moves toward what we call interculturality.
So it's not just about trying to force a learner to mimic a native speaker's accent or, some specific cultural idiom perfectly.
Precisely. The core message is that English belongs to the world. L2 users aren't just borrowing it. They have the right to use it, to adapt it for their own needs in their own context.
That feels so liberating, to not have to constantly compare yourself to some idealized native speaker standard.
It is, and to really get our heads around the scale of this, the sources use linguist Braj-Katrew's framework, the 3 circles of English.
Ah, yes. A really useful model to visualize this.
It really is. So first you have the inner circle.
Okay, the inner circle. This is the origin point, the base.
That's it. The countries where English is the primary native language, the L1, so the USA, the UK, Australia, Canada.
And historically, these are the countries that set the rules.
Yeah.
They decided what was correct English.
For centuries, yes. They essentially...
Then you've got the outer circle. I always think of this as
on Thai food. You're using English to talk about the entire world, not just the inner circle. It truly demonstrates English as a global tool.
Okay, so moving from the types of culture, the study guide zooms in on a really specific cultural value.
Yes, when discussing target culture material, specifically American culture, it highlights the value of equality of opportunity.
Right. It's defined as this belief that everyone should have the same chance to succeed, regardless of their background, race, or gender.
It's rooted in that famous line from the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. The idea that your starting line shouldn't determine your finish line.
And this foundational value leads us to probably the single most important distinction in modern education.
The difference between equality and equity.
Yes. This is so essential in a global context. Let's make sure we get this clear. Equality means treating everyone the exact same way.
Giving them the same book, the same test, the same resources.
But equity is different. Equity means giving people what they need to have the same opportunities.
Which is critical because learners globally come from wildly different starting points. Economic, social, educational. So treating everyone the same, equality, can actually reinforce their disadvantages.
Right. So if a teacher gives a $100 textbook to a student in a wealthy city and one in a remote village, that's equality.
Yeah.
But If the student in the village has no electricity to access the online parts of it,
Then the equality of the textbook doesn't actually help them. Equity would be about addressing that underlying barrier. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of global access.
so it becomes incredibly clear. And this is where open educational resources, or OERs, come in as a tactical tool for achieving that global equity.
Absolutely. An OER is any resource for teaching or learning lesson plans, textbooks, videos that's in the public domain or under an open license like Creative Commons.
And the key benefit, the whole point, is that they are free.
Free to use, reuse, revise, and share. This just completely removes the economic barrier of proprietary publishing, which is a massive hurdle for so many learners.
So OERs are the direct mechanism for supporting equity.
They are. They provide immediate free access to high-quality materials for millions of students and teachers who simply can't afford expensive textbooks.
It really does help level the playing field.
Sure.
If a teacher in, say, Ghana can access the same top-tier materials as a teacher in Germany because they're free and open.
That's equitable opportunity in action. It shifts the focus from buying material to adapting it.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle in these sources, the reflective teacher.
Because understanding all this, EIL, the circles, OERs, it's not static knowledge. You have to constantly assess how it's working.
So reflective teaching isn't a one-time thing. It's a constant cycle of improvement.
An essential one, because your students and the technology are always changing. The sources outline a really clear three-step process.
First, you observe.
Just watching. Yourself, your students, the dynamic. How did that international culture lesson actually land? Was the vocabulary too tough?
Then you analyze, thinking deeply about why things happened.
Right. Was the activity too hard, or was it the cultural context that was confusing? You have to question your assumptions.
And finally, you adjust. You make tangible changes for the next time.
It's an iterative process. It guarantees your teaching stays effective as the world keeps shifting. The whole goal is to maximize student learning.
So what does this all mean? We've traced this incredible story of global English, starting with the simple fact that L2 speakers are now the majority.
We moved from that monolithic inner circle standard to this flexible intercultural tool represented by EIL and the huge expanding circle.
We look at the importance of culture source, target, and international, and we ended with for fairness and access, which are equity and OERs.
The central theme for you, the listener, whether you're a teacher or a learner, is that this shift is total. English is no longer a standard that has to be perfectly replicated.
It's a flexible, adaptive tool.
A tool that L2 speakers all over the world have every right to shape and use for their own communication needs.
So to leave you with a final provocative thought, something that builds on all of this, the source material had a simulation prompt about adapting content.
It imagined an activity focused heavily on the target culture, something like famous Americans talk about equality of opportunity.
So the challenge for you is this. If English truly belongs to the world, how would you use the principles of OERs, that flexibility, to swap out that American target culture context?
How could you adapt it for a neutral but just as powerful international cultural context?
Think about how you'd keep that core lesson about fairness and opportunity, but globalize the examples. Because that kind of critical analysis, that's really the ultimate goal of teaching in this new EIL world.